everyone, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and my guest today is Monte Farber. Monty was born in Brooklyn, New York, and he studied comparative religion before he became interested in astrology in 1974, which just happened to coincide when he met his future wife, Amy. Amy Zerner is his artistic collaborator as well as his life partner, and at the time she was studying astrology. His focus shifted to making astrology understood and accessible to a broad audience, and now he is the world's foremost creator of interactive personal guidance systems, including 40 books, divination systems, DVDs, and meditation CDs. They've been published around the world in 14 languages by major publishing houses. Monty even has his own shelves in every Barnes & Noble store, and his best-selling titles include Astrology Gems, the Tarot Discovery Kit, Karma Cards, the Truth Fairy Pendulum, and the Healing Deck. Today, we're going to discuss his latest book, Quantum Affirmations, the new energy science of conscious manifestation. Monte Farber, welcome.
Thank you, Miriam. I sound so fascinating.
Well, I totally anticipate that you will be fascinating.
Oh, I don't know. I think so. I think it can be done.
Okay. Now, from my introduction and
it was a beautiful one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. From the information you sent me, I understand that you took up astrology in pursuit of Amy.
I did.
Now, how did that reconcile with your studies of comparative religion?
Well, I was studying Amy and she was studying astrology, so I learned about astrology and the tarot. I've always had an open mind because, believe it or not, here I am, a psychic astrology tarot reader, but I've always thought of myself as a scientist. I went to a high school in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Technical High School, and I've always kept an open mind, and I've always remembered Mr. Huxley's expression, which is, I'm too much a skeptic not to believe that anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you and your wife have created such an interesting life for yourselves. Tell us about what you both do.
Well, we have. Actually, it's really wonderful. We call our brand, because I guess you have to have a brand now, though I always smell cattle whenever I say that.
Singed cattle.
Singed cattle that are not very happy to see you. Our brand is called The Enchanted World, and it started with The Enchanted Tarot. My first book in 1988 was called Karma Cards, which is still in print, and you can still get it. It's on our shelves, and it's from Sterling now. It used to be with Penguin, and that came out back in the day when President Reagan was announced to have been influenced by astrologers, so it did very well. It had a very good launch. It did. And so, and then the second project we did was called The Enchanted Tarot, and that was the first time Amy and I really worked together on a project. I wrote the book and she did the art, 78 tapestries in her National Endowment for the Arts award-winning style. And then we've taken it from there. So we have created all these different divination systems as we have explored them. They always say you should write what you want to learn about, so that's what we've done, as well as what we know. Mm-hmm. And so we have this great life. We live in East Hampton, where Amy grew up, which is out on the end of Long Island. It's a very nice place. Everyone might know about the Hamptons, which is supposedly a 1% kind of enclave, which it is, but we're in the 99% area of the Hamptons. We're the people who still work for a living, and we do. And we just have a great time. Amy does clothing now that sells at Bergdorf Goodman and Neiman Marcus, and she's doing jewelry, and you can see her stuff on amyzerner.com, actually, and my stuff on montefarber.com. We make it easy. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do.
How do you think astrology is able to predict future probabilities? Or really anything is able to predict the future?
That is a very interesting question, and probably one of the most important questions there are. Quantum Affirmations, which is the book we're talking about now, is based on quantum physics, which I've always been interested in because quantum physicists they make me sound like a Swiss banker. They are so far out. They talk about probable futures. So I think what you do when you predict the future is you tune in to the probable future that's most likely from this time, whether you're reading a person or whether you're reading the stars, or if you're like a Native American. They used to go out of their teepee or wherever they were sleeping, and they'd look at the clouds and the birds and the leaves, and they would sort of know things. I think we are all plugged into the morphic field. I think Rupert Sheldrake calls it the morphic field, or if you want to call it the quantum field. And like a radio, if you tune yourself and you set your intention to know about the future, it will be given to you.
Well, how did you go about tuning yourself, Monty?
You have very good questions. I studied astrology, and I had a very good time with it. I try and enjoy things. I'm like the clowns at the rodeo. They're good riders, but they're having fun. And so I would go to parties out here in the Hamptons. It's Hamptons party tested, my astrology. My focus group were people who could really focus, and usually in a way that's they're criticizing you. So I would I've read for incredible people, and I don't mean just incredibly famous or wealthy. I mean just incredibly wonderful people out here. And I found out the ways that we were similar, the ways that we were different, and they said to me, why don't you create something so that we can learn astrology, the ones that were interested? And I said, okay, I will. And that's how I did Karma Cards. I designed it as an astrology flashcard game that tells the future. And it rewired my brain because I broke down the planets, the signs, and the houses into sentence fragments. And I did this before I owned a computer, because this was 1986. Mm-hmm. I was still working in the film business then. And I did it on flashcards. And it just rewired my brain to the point where I was then able to become a very good tarot and astrology reader. And eventually, unfortunately, what precipitated being psychic was the passing of Amy's mother in 1996. That's how it all started.
Well, I'm not going to let you leave it at that. How did that precipitate being psychic, and what was your experience?
Well, I some of my clients laugh when I say this, but I'm a classically trained psychic, if there is such a thing, in the way of the old mystery schools where I learned astrology. I have learned the tarot. I've done books about the goddess, games that I've invented that are based on the games. I'm always trying to make things easy and accessible for people because everyone's so busy now, and they only want something that's fun and fast. So that's what we try and do. And that's why we have our own shelves at Barnes & Noble, because we make things that are fun, fast, and they sell. And commercial, which is not a dirty word to us. So I was doing things like finding Bulgari watches and show dogs and, missing all kinds of things. And I realized, this is really not from astrology or the tarot. I have the writing of the books. Every time I'd write a different book, whether it's Goddess Guide Me or The Psychic Circle, or I would say, well, this book is going to help you improve your intuition. And it's true, not only using it, but writing it really improved my intuition. And when Amy's mom passed away in 1996, we all used to work together. Actually, the Enchanted Tarot, I think, is dedicated to her, as is our subsequent life. I missed her so much, and Amy missed her so much, that I tried to contact her. I had never really thought of myself as a psychic, but I was able to contact her, and I got all kinds of useful information. And then I tried it a little bit with friends, and when I realized that I was actually doing this, because I said I'm a scientist, I hold it at arm's length even today, I decided, well, I can really do this. I can help people, and that's really what it's all about.
You said an interesting phrase. You said, I rewired my brain.
Yes.
And I get the sense that a major part of opening up to psychic abilities is actually starting to trust yourself, to trust that this is a real phenomenon and not just your imagination.
You're 100% correct. Fear is the destroyer. The biggest part of being psychic is trusting that it's going to come to you. And the second part is being brave enough to tell the person what they've asked, which is why it's always a good idea, if you're a psychic, to say, do you really want to know? Because sometimes the information is not what they you might think they want to hear. Usually it is what they want to hear, but you might not think it's what they want to hear, because people usually know what you're going to tell them. They are looking for confirmation. Because I think everyone is a bit psychic. They're always talking about how we only use a very small portion of our brain. Well, how can you use that other part if you don't think it exists?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I understand that you consult for business executives. How do they use your services?
Back in the go-go days of mergers and acquisitions, they would end up with two of things. They'd have two treasurers, they'd have two of this and two of that. They'd want to know who to keep and who to let go. And they wouldn't necessarily just slavishly go by what I said, but I would be part of their mix. I would describe the two people, and if I described them accurately, the way they looked, the way they sounded, the way they worked, then I would go on and say what I thought in terms of how they would fit with the person I was reading for, because I usually read for the bosses. And they want to work with people they like, basically, or that they can work with. And that was the way it was then. Now I do a lot of investment people, advising them on investments. I did videos that were, and still are, posted on thestreet.com, which is Jim Cramer's website. And that was funny because I was the only psychic they had. I don't even know if he knew I was on there. But they came to interview me and Amy as a very unusual business. They were doing a series on unusual businesses. And then as a joke, they asked me 7 questions. And this was when President Obama was running against Hillary Clinton. And Yahoo might be bought by Microsoft. And I was 6 out of 7. So I said yes. Mr. Obama's senator at the time was going to beat Hillary, and they thought that was hilariously funny. And then they also thought that I told them Microsoft was not going to buy Yahoo. I was only wrong about, I thought that Romney would be the president, but I might have been off by 4 years. So I don't know. Mm-hmm.